Well, hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great day thus far. Starting to finally cool down here in the Coachella Valley, which is rather nice for a change. It's supposed to be about 102 today and then drop down into the 90s. So getting cool. Well, to us, 90 degrees is cool. It might not be to y'all that don't live in the valley. But so today I'm going to continue our conversation on coping mechanisms, chapter 4 of my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. So I want to make sure this thing's recording. It is. Hi, Kathy. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Jim, how are you? So, in chapter 4 of my book, we talk about coping mechanisms. And there's actually, under this list that I'm going to talk about this morning, there's about 24, 25 um, different types. But I'm going to probably go through them all, but I'm not going to elaborate on all of them. It'll just take way too long. So, but this is just a partial list of what kind of coping mechanisms we can use. So, the first one I'll talk about is acting out. So, not coping or giving in to the pressure to misbehave. So, in other words, what we'll do is we're not being able to cope with our feelings of shame or inferiority. So instead, what we'll do is we'll act out in inappropriate ways, such as turning to drugs, alcohol, food, sex, and many other ways. So we just can't, we'll act out so we don't have to deal with the immediate pressure of how we're feeling, the shame that might be there, or whatever feelings we're dealing with. So we'll find alternative ways, and you're going to find this pretty much a pattern throughout these lists. You find alternative ways of acting out in order to deal with emotions and feelings that we're uncomfortable feeling. In fact, we probably have never felt them before. I'm not going to elaborate on this one. There's adaptation, the human ability to change, aim inhibition, the lowering of goals to what seems more achievable. And that one is like, I, sometimes we set these goals and we always tell people, don't set yourself up for failure. And I think that's probably the wrong thing to say, because a lot of people that have been abused, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual, or all four, or just one of them, a lot of times we don't believe we can achieve anything. So we'll think about a high standard and then we'll go down to a lower standard, because we know we can probably, achieve the lower standard a lot easier than we can the higher standard. And then there's altruism, which is an unselfish concern for the welfare of others. And what we'll do is we'll turn our focus on helping different causes or other people as a way of not thinking or taking the focus off how we're feeling or dealing with our issues. You hear it a lot of times in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're struggling, the common thing to say is, well, just go work with another alcoholic. Well, that's great, and we have to do that, and it's good to be altruistic, but we can't do it and just to escape our own feelings. We have to face what we're dealing with. If we don't, then working with another alcoholic or a friend or another organization is great, but there's going to come that time in the middle of the night when you're all by yourself, and those feelings that you've been ignoring by doing this altruistic work is going to come back and haunt you in the middle of the night. And how are you going to deal with it? And hopefully you don't turn to the bottle, because a lot of times what we're looking for is an instant satisfaction, instant gratification. And we know the one way we can do that, and that is our default button, and that's either drugs, alcohol, pornography, overeating, all sorts of different things. So we got to be really careful with that. So do the altruistic work, but make sure you're not avoiding it, not avoiding your own personal feelings and emotions that you must deal with and face. Okay. Another one is we attack, an offensive attempt to defeat a threat. When we feel threatened or offended, oftentimes we'll turn the situation around and make the other person the one that is wrong and flawed. Okay, so Another big thing with any kind of survivor is they don't want to admit their fault. A lot of that comes from perfectionism. If I was wrong as a kid, then I was being reprimanded emotionally or verbally or beat physically, a number of different things. So um, the minute we feel like we're being attacked, we're going to turn it around on the perceived attacker and make it all about him and make him feel like he's the flawed, or him or her feel like they are the flawed ones. Then there's avoidance, the act of mentally or physically staying away from something that causes distress. We will avoid going to places that trigger us and cause us distress. In the same way, we will avoid people that trigger us or that we perceive to be a threat or toxic. Yeah, Kathy, being codependent, some of these are going to be really hard, really hard. So the avoidance, and that's actually it's actually a good coping mechanism. It's just as altruism is, if you use it properly. Avoidance is a really good coping mechanism because you don't want to put yourself in places that are going to cause you distress. You don't want to be around toxic people that are going to cause distress on you. So you learn to set those boundaries. I did it for the first first year of my sobriety. I didn't go around family because there was a lot of alcohol and drinking. And it's not that I didn't like my family. I loved them, but I had to do what I had to do for myself. And the big thing for me, even today, is toxic people. I will avoid them as much as possible. If I don't have to be around them, I won't be around them. If I am around them, then I just, I'm nice to them. I love them like I'm supposed to love them, but I just don't put myself in that position for too long of a time. We've got to protect ourselves in this recovery process. Then there's compensation, something that makes up for a weakness in one area by gaining strength in another. So oftentimes we'll focus all our attention on something that we know we're good at to increase our knowledge towards that area rather than sticking with something we're struggling to learn how to do. We don't want to look like a failure. So we'll just stick to the one thing that we know we can do well. And I'm guilty of that a lot. I play the classical guitar, and when I say classical, I mean like Spanish guitar. And it's an extreme amount of work, a lot of technique and hours of practice. And I can get real frustrated with myself. So I'll do it for a while, and then when I get frustrated, I want to put it down and walk away. So and do something that I know I can do, something easier than that. So it's something I'm working on that especially the guitar, because I love playing it. So I'm going to start giving myself a set amount of time and set things to do. And no matter how hard it is, I'm not going to walk away from it because I really want to master the Spanish guitar. So that's something else we'll do because we don't want to look like a failure. So if it's too hard, we'll just walk away from it. Okay. Crying's another one. The release of tears to relieve stress. Hey, what's up, Stitch? The release of tears to relieve stress. This is a healthy one. Tears bring healing. I remember I used to tell Kathy all the time before I got sober that I feel like I got to cry, but I don't want to cry. She'd ask me why. And I said, because if I start, I won't be able to stop. And when I was in Betty Ford, that happened to me. About a week or so into it, I just finished a grief letter to my father who died when I was 12. And I had to read it to the group. And I couldn't make it through it the first time. And for 45 minutes, I sobbed. I walked out back. The spiritual counselor came with me. And he just sat next to me for 45 minutes. And I absolutely sobbed. So crying is really good. It's a really good way to relieve a lot of stress. It will drain you emotionally, but that's okay. So don't be afraid to cry, especially men. You have those feelings for a reason. God gave them to you. There's no difference. The only difference between a man and a woman is physiological. But if we're all made in the image of God, that means if a woman can cry, we can cry. We have emotions and feelings just like they do. But society has told men, you can't cry. Suck it up, be a man, figure it out, all that sweet stuff. So don't be afraid to cry. please. Another one is denial, the refusal to acknowledge that an event has occurred. When it comes to abuse, this is a really, really big one. Because if we stay stuck in the denial and act as though nothing happened, then we believe it would just go away. But the reality is it only marinates, grows, and causes physical issues. And if left untreated, can cause a lot of physical, emotional, and spiritual damage and loss. Believe it or not, you stay in denial, you're tearing your body apart physically. You're tearing your mind apart emotionally and your heart apart emotionally. It's not going to go away. You can't act as though it didn't happen. I think it's in, there's a scripture, and I can't remember which one it is, but it says, you can't heal a wound by acting like it's not there. Okay? It's there. It's not going to go away. Some of us are affected more deeply than others, but eventually something's going to happen. The scab's going to get ripped off that wound, not bumped off, but ripped off, and it's going to be painful. Dr. Gabor Mate, he was a MD, and he's great doctor, great addiction person. He's been doing it for years, but he was a physical doctor, MD, for a while, and he treated all the chronic diseases: cancer, heart disease, Crohn's disease, liver disease, diabetes, stuff like that. And so he started getting curious, and what he did is he started spending about an hour a couple times a week with his clients that were, had these chronic illnesses. And what he discovered, when 100% of them, is that all these diseases were a result of unresolved childhood trauma. Okay, they were a result of, or the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So a lot of people, I had stomach issues for a long time, and once I got in recovery and worked on all my stuff, I no longer have stomach issues. Okay, so a lot of people that I know that are dealing and have unresolved issues, they also, I know for a fact, they have a lot of physical issues going on as well. So you can't ignore it, you can't deny it. It's there, and the only way to get through it is to work through it. Dealing with it is not healing it. So there's a lot of work that must be done. And then there's the act of disassociation, which the act of intentionally or unintentionally disconnecting from one's own conscious experience of reality due to perceived threat of damage or annihilation. A lot of sexual abuse survivors, they disassociate during the act. They'll remove themselves mentally from the physical act. They'll put themselves in another place in the room, or they'll look at the ceiling. They got the old popcorn ceilings. They'll imagine they're in space. So they learn how to disassociate at a very young age. And then as life goes on, any kind of physical or emotional abuse, they'll do the same thing. They'll just completely disconnect from life at that point in time. Another coping thing is distancing, the act of moving away. This is what we call the geographical. A lot of addicts and alcoholics do it, thinking that the problem is going to go away. You don't even have to be an alcoholic or addict. I mean, you got issues in your life, and you just think by moving away they'll go away. That it's wrong. I know that I moved out here to the desert in 1990, and I was running from my issues. But the problem is, as soon as I got settled here, my issues are right back with me. So wherever we are, there go our problems. So geographicals don't work. Excuse me. Then there's escapism, the act of using fantasy or entertainment to forget about unpleasant realities. Again, we'll drift into a fantasy world to forget about our problems. The problem is that when we return to reality, the problem's still there. I used to go surfing. That was my escape. I'd go surfing, and I see my mom calling me on the beach, and I want to come in. I'd ignore her like she wasn't there, or I'd stay out. I know maybe she was going to pick us up at a certain time, or I had to be home by a certain time. I'd stay out as late as I wanted to, because I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be around the chaos and confusion and abuse that was happening in the house. It was just a lot safer for me to be out in that water. And so I was willing to take, a little bit of consequences for not showing up like I was supposed to. So we use different ways to escape. You go to concerts. There's all different kind of ways. For me, it was surfing. So Um, and that falls into the fantasy or the act of escaping reality into a world of possibility. Okay. There's idealization, the act of playing up a subject's good points and ignoring its limitations. This was something I was really good at. I knew I'd go into something, and I knew going into it that probably wasn't the best thing, or maybe this isn't as good as it sounds, but I would make it sound so good to myself and even to my wife and others that they would buy into it. But the problem is, every time I did that, it was a big fail. That never worked. Okay. There's identification, the act of copying others to take on their characteristics. So, the one thing about recovery is one thing that we're looking for is we're looking to find our authentic self. I know growing up, for me, the people that I mentored, that I was not, no, I'm sorry, the people that I looked up to, I became like them. They were doing it, I did it. Okay. Because I didn't know who I was myself. I didn't know how to set those boundaries. So we'll pretend to be somebody we're not. We'll mock what others are doing in order to look cool like they do, maybe. So we got to be really careful with that. We have to find our authentic self. Who are we? And be okay with who we are. We don't have to be like everybody else, even if you're being pressured. We don't have to be like anybody else. We are our own authentic person with our own authentic identity, and we must live up to that. Nobody else's. Okay. We got post-traumatic growth, the act of using the energy of trauma for good. Now, and this is good. Um, there's a chart I have. I did the chart about a month ago. Um, Eventually, what we want to do is we want to take the trauma, like for instance, myself, my sexual abuse, physical, emotional, and spiritual, everything that I've learned in life, everything I've gone through in life. I've taken it, instead of playing a victim. Now I'm a victor, but I take that, what I used to use as a victim, now I use it to help other people. What did I learn from everything I went through in life? Everything we go through in life is a lesson. We have to look at it that way. Good or bad or indifferent, it's a lesson. We can always find something to learn from everything that happens to us in our life. And I did that. Hey, Michael, I did that with my trauma, and I use it to help other people now. And it's how I can relate to people and how they can relate to me. It helps a lot. So I no longer play the victim card. I play the victor card by helping other people. Okay. So you want to make sure that you use it for the good, because you can use it, the traumatic growth. What they're saying is you're growing through your trauma. You're not staying stuck in it. Okay. There's provocation, the act of making others angry so one can retaliate. If I had a perceived feeling that my integrity was being compromised, oftentimes what I would do is I turn it around by provoking the person that I felt was attacking my integrity. I provoked them into becoming angry so I could turn the whole thing around on them and make them out to be the bad guys, and I would attack their integrity in turn. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't pretty. My sponsor taught me a long time ago, Randy, you leave every conversation leaving the other person's integrity intact. It doesn't matter what they've said or done to you. You walk away leaving their integrity intact. And that's been one of the smartest, one of the most powerful tools that I have in my tool bucket, because I no longer have to tear people down that try to tear me down. I just walk away and say, you know what? I'm sorry you feel that way. I'll talk to you later. I'm not going to allow you to talk to me that way. There's rationalization, the creation of logical reasons for bad behavior. I used to tell Kathy all the time, if what happened to me happened to you, you'd be acting this way too. Or the other one was, if what happened to me happened to you, you'd drink the way I drink or act the way I'm acting. So don't get out of my face. Don't tell me how I got to be. You never walked in my shoes, so I don't want to hear it. That's a famous one, man. I always played that card. Then there's a regression, return to a childish state to avoid problems. I have seen this in so many people that I've worked with, for the good and for the bad. You got to remember that a lot of people in recovery. They're stuck at the age that abuse happened to them when they started using. So, I was a 49-year-old man when I walked into recovery, but I was a 12-year-old kid. And so that behavior is, we never learn how to behave like a man. So a lot of times when we got ourselves, or when I got myself in a bad position or situation, the only way I knew how to get out of it was to act like a 12-year-old kid and throw an adult temper tantrum. Otherwise, I'd manipulate people to do what I wanted them to do. I didn't know how to do anything else. So we'll turn to childish acts when we're to get our way. But then the other one is that there's been a couple girls that I worked with. My wife and I work with couples, and when we start talking about how good of people they are, and how much we love them, and that you're a great person. I've seen them turn into this 12-year-old little girl that they just melt, and it's like they love hearing it so much, and I can't explain it. You'd have to see it, but it's a sight to behold. It's just beautiful to see these people, and it's mostly girls that melt into this little 12-year-old girl that is really enjoying what dad is saying to them. So regression can be both good and bad. Okay. Then there's repression, the act of unconsciously hiding uncomfortable thoughts. So that a lot of abuse victims, they've repressed their memory. And that's it's funny because they repress them and they won't remember. They flat out don't, and it's legitimate. They don't remember. There was a 65-year-old man that was in one of the groups I belonged to. And at 65 years old, he was with his therapist, and he'd been with her for a while. And finally, one day, she looked at him and goes, some of the things you're saying just have a hint of sexual abuse in them. Is it possible that maybe you were sexually abused as a child? And she'd been seeing it for a while, so there was a lot of stuff uncovered. And he looked at her that day, and he goes, I remember my dad molested me as a kid. And he went through the details of it, right? So he repressed it. He was 65 years old. And then finally, after a year or so of therapy, it was able to come out. And he went home and told his wife that day. And his wife looked at him and says, "Thank God." And it wasn't in a bad way. She goes, "Thank God, because now I know I'm not the problem, that you were the problem all along." So we have these behaviors that are coming out. And we say, well, it's just part of being a man. We're drinking, we're looking, running around with other women. We're doing all this stupid stuff that we're not supposed to be doing as married men. And the wife's going crazy. Well, what did I do? Why is this going on? I didn't do nothing. I'm loving, I'm kind. So the wife thinks they're crazy. And the fact is that he was holding on to this in the repression. And when it finally came out, they started to heal their relationship. So a lot of times people are acting a funny way for certain reasons, right? Then there's self-harm, the act of physically damaging the body. Now, you've all seen cutters. You've probably heard about cutters. And it's interesting because when I run across these people, I'm always curious because I can't talk about something I don't know about. So with cutters, what I know is that they cut because they can endure the physical pain much easier than they can the emotional pain that they've been fighting. Okay. But then just recently, I was also told that they also can, by cutting, they can control when the pain comes. See, a physical pain, they're controlling the pain. They can physically cut. They know it's coming. They can deal with it. It's easier to deal with the emotional pain. This emotional pain that survivors and a lot of people, whether survivors or not, deal with, we can't ever tell you when it's going to come. It just shows up when it wants to show up. And that's the hard part about it. But with the physical pain, they can control the pain. They can deal with the physical pain much easier than they can the emotional pain. And then there's the somatization, which is all the physical part, the act of turning psychological problems into physical symptoms. And I talked about that a little bit earlier with Gabor Mate. A lot of times our physical problems are more emotional than they are, or psychological than they are physical. Okay. And you can do your own research on that if you want. Again, like I say, I'm not doing all of them. I got one more I'm going to do, and then we'll go on. The last one I'm going to do is trivialization, the act of making small what is really big. Thought I was going to get through without that happening today. This is a common trait in many survivors. I would unknowingly laugh after talking about my abuse with my counselors and therapists. Sorry about that, guys. I don't have a studio yet, so it's just something we got to deal with. So we'll trivialize what happened to us. It's no big deal. It happened a long time ago. I'm over it. What I used to do, and I didn't know I was doing it, but after I would talk about my abuse, I was in Betty Ford, and I was talking about it to the group, I would laugh. And finally one day, and I didn't know I was laughing. I was just talking. And finally my counselor one day goes, my counselor looks at me and goes, Randy, why are you laughing? I go, what do you mean why am I laughing? He goes, yeah, you laugh after you just told us something that's not a laughing matter. So it's a defense mechanism. So we trivialize a lot of different things. And believe me, I trivialized my abuse for many, many years. And it's a big deal. What happened to me, it was a big, big, big deal. It wasn't nothing small. And it took me a long time to understand that. I didn't want to make it bigger than it should be. But the reality is it was a big deal. Hey, Deanna. Bob, how are you both? It was a really big deal. So anyways, those are just a few of the coping mechanisms that we can use. There's more in that mix. It's in chapter 4 of my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. So next week, what we'll do is we'll talk about maladaptive coping mechanisms, because we have both constructive and maladaptive. So we'll talk a little more about the maladaptive coping mechanisms next week. Don't forget to visit my website, courageoushealers.org. Check out what we're doing over there. I also got my life coaching. We work with, my wife and I work with marriage. We do the couples, because when it comes to a marriage and working on a marriage and resolving those issues, you can't just do one partner. There's two people involved in a marriage, and thus two people are coming into marriage, both with their baggage. And so therefore, the way Kathy and I work is, if we're going to work on your marriage, then we're going to work with both of you individually as well to get your issues resolved, because until your issues are resolved, the marriage issues won't be resolved. And it's been working. If one person's not going to do it, then the marriage isn't going to work out. Okay. I work with addiction. I work with addiction. I work with abuse. I do inner healing and spiritual work as well. So visit my website, changeyourlifestorynow.com, for the life coaching. Just go there, fill out the contact form, and then I'll usually get back to you within 4 hours. Usually as soon as I see the message, if I'm not real busy, I'll respond to your message instantly. And all I got to say is, what are you waiting for? There's no day like today to start your new life. Okay, everybody needs help. And I got packages that can go for 3 months, 6 months, a year, or you can do individual, sessions. It just costs you a little more that way. So I break it down. Don't forget my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. It's available on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and now it's on audiobook. So join me next week. We'll go over, like I said, we're going to go over maladaptive coping mechanisms next week. And then we'll close out the following week with a positive coping skills. Always try to end on a positive note. And then Courageous Healers, we're wanting to go to the next level, and we're really, really trying to obtain a facility. It's a small office space right now just to get us started here in the Coachella Valley, but we can't do it alone. We need your help. So if you know anybody out there that's in the real estate industry or an investor or whatever that might have an empty office space somewhere that's just been sitting, they can't lease it, they'd be willing to lease it on or rent it out on like in-kind donation type situation, that would be great. Just give them my number, or give me their number, and I'll reach out to them and let them know. Or also what you can do is you can go to the website, courageoushealers.org. Right on the very front, there's a donate button. You can donate to the foundation. It all goes to great cause. We're like I say, we're trying to go from outreach to actually starting to do the work inside, but I can't do it until I get that building. You can donate a one-time donation, or you can set it up where you can donate monthly as well. Okay. And remember that we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so all your contributions will be tax deductible. All right. So y'all have a great week. Thanks for joining me today. I couldn't do this without you. And I will see you next Monday, same time, same channel. Everybody, remember, if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does. But more importantly, God does. Be blessed, everybody. Have a great day.